Rain slashed through the darkness like knives, and I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, tore through a flooded alley in West Side Chicago. Bare feet bleeding, nightgown shredded, I clutched a soaked bag holding my last shred of hope. A few clothes, $25, and a scrap of paper with a shelter's address. An hour ago, I stood in a freezing basement staring at the red wedding dress my mother had hung up. My family called it my day of glory, but I knew staying meant becoming the bride of Ezra Khalid, a 52-year-old man who'd buried 3 wives before they hit 20. I broke the lock, climbed through a window, and ran, but the roar of cars and the glint of knives chased me. My father, Malik, bellowed through the storm, "Layla, you can't escape!" A blade scraped across the bus door I'd just bolted onto, making me flinch. The driver, an older woman with sharp eyes, didn't ask questions, just floored it. "Sit down, kid," she said, her voice calm but firm. I was headed to the county courthouse, hoping the law would save me. But my heart still pounded, like my family was right behind me. In our community, girls are property, your first period a contract to sell yourself. I refused to be sold. I ran, not just for me, but for Amira, my cousin who died at 16, and every girl locked in a cage. This story isn't just about escape. It's about how I, a 15-year-old girl, broke the rules of an entire community, faced guns and knives, and sparked a fire of freedom. Have you ever had to run to save yourself? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover what happens when I confront my family and the world to take back my life. At 10 years old, I, Layla Brooks, stood in a frigid kitchen, hands trembling as I gripped a knife to chop vegetables, but in my heart, I was slicing through fear. In Chicago's West Side, my family didn't raise me to dream of being a doctor or an artist. They raised me to be a bride, a gift for a man I'd never met. In our community, girls don't have futures. We have glorious days, when our first period turns us into property, handed over to men 3 times our age. I grew up with invisible scars, the sting of a leather belt, and lessons that silence was honor. But inside, I wasn't silent. I counted every day, waiting for a chance to break the iron cage that held me since birth. At 12, I saw the moment that changed everything. My cousin Amira, 14, stood in a white wedding dress, her eyes hollow like a broken doll's. The man beside her, 47, grinned with gold teeth, his heavy ring gleaming like a badge of power. They called it an engagement, but I saw a death sentence. Amira didn't speak, didn't smile, just bowed her head as her mother whispered about honor. 2 years later, Amira was dead at 16 from heart failure. But I overheard the aunties in the kitchen, her 3rd miscarriage, her body too frail to endure. That night I hugged my pillow, crying soundlessly. I knew if I did nothing, I'd be the next Amira. I started starving myself, not because I hated food or wanted to be pretty. I discovered a secret. The thinnest girls in our family often got their periods last. Every meal I skipped was a day I bought, a day delaying my fate. "Twig," my mother Zara mocked, slamming a plate of rice in front of me. "Eat! No one marries a skeleton." But I didn't care. I turned 13, then 14, still no blood, and in my mind I counted each day as a victory. They laughed at me, but I saw worry in Mom's eyes. She knew I was defying her. My family never let me forget my fate. They spoke of Ezra Khalid, a 52-year-old man with 3 wives dead young like it was a medal. I hid tiny scraps of paper in my shoe soles, listing the names of cousins married off, a reminder I had to escape. Every night I lay awake, hearing the door's lock click, telling myself, I won't bow. Have you ever carried a secret to hold on to hope? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover what my family did to mold me into the perfect bride, through blood and pain. Boiling water scalded my hands, and I, Layla Brooks, bit my lip to keep from screaming. In Chicago's West Side at 13, I wasn't learning to cook for myself. I was being forged into a bride, molded through pain in our family's kitchen. In our community, girls weren't raised to dream. We were trained to serve, to bow our heads, to fade into the shadows of men 3 times our age. My mother, Zara, called it preparation, but every burn, every lash was a chain tightening around my soul. Beneath my mask of obedience, I sharpened a blade of defiance, waiting for the day I'd cut my way to freedom. Every Sunday morning at 1 a.m., I stood with my cousins, hands shaking as we held trays of food for the family's men. Silence was the rule. No words, no glances, or punishment came swift. If I spilled a drop of soup or accidentally met my uncle's eyes, my father, Malik, dragged me to the backyard. 10 lashes from a leather belt tore into my skin, each one like ripping flesh. Bow your head, he growled. That's your honor. I counted each strike, swallowing tears, my skin raw but my will unbroken. Once they publicly shamed me, forcing me to kneel in the community hall for disrespect after whispering to a cousin. The scornful stares hurt worse than the belt. The pain wasn't just physical. Mom poured boiling water on my hands to toughen them for kitchen work, leaving angry red burns. Ezra Khalid doesn't want weak hands, she said, naming the man whose 3 wives died young. She slathered skin-bleaching cream on my face, a stinging liquid that made my eyes water. Men want fair brides, she insisted, like I was an auction item. I saw my cousins, 16, pregnant with their 2nd child, their eyes like shattered dolls. I swore, not me. I smiled when the aunties asked if I dreamed of motherhood. Yes, I lied, my voice sweet, my heart raging. I hid my defiance in scraps of paper, tucked into my shoe soles, listing the names of cousins forced into marriage. Each scrap was a vow. I'd escape, not just for me, but for them. I lay awake, hearing the door's lock click, knowing I was watched. But every burn, every lash fed the fire inside me. Have you ever worn a mask to survive a cage? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover the spark that changed everything. An old notebook slipped off Ms. Sarah Nguyen's desk, and I, Layla Brooks, 14 years old, picked it up, my heart pounding like a drum. In Chicago's West Side, I'd never heard that girls could choose their fate. We were taught to bow our heads, marry men 3 times our age, and stay silent forever. But that notebook, with its torn cover and faded ink, held a secret that turned my world upside down. Beneath scribbled math problems, I found CPS phone numbers, shelter addresses, and a handwritten note. You're not a bride, you're a person. In that moment, I saw a light, and I knew I'd never return to the darkness. I slipped the notebook inside my shirt, feeling like I was holding a bomb. My mother, Zara, always searched my things, so I didn't dare take it to my room. That night, I hid under my bed, reading each line by the glow of my phone's flashlight, my breath catching in shock. The notebook said that in the U.S., no one could be forced to marry before 18, even with parental consent. No cultural exceptions, no loopholes for tradition. I cried, not from sadness, but because I realized I wasn't crazy for being scared. I wasn't wrong for wanting to run. It listed CPS numbers, shelter addresses, and laws. Teachers, counselors, doctors had to report suspected abuse. I memorized every number, every word, disguising them as fake math problems in my school notebook. If a 15-year-old girl is forced to marry, call this number, I whispered, like a vow. Ms. Nguyen became my beacon. I noticed her eyes, gentle but sharp, like she knew I was hiding something. I wanted to rush to her, spill everything about the burns on my hands, about Ezra Khalid, the man whose 3 wives died young. But I was terrified. My family was like a pack of wolves, always watching. If they found the notebook, they'd burn it, and maybe me too. I stashed it in the classroom behind a bookshelf, checking daily to ensure it was still there. Each time I touched it, I felt stronger, like truth was my armor. I thought of Amira, my cousin who died at 16, and my younger cousins, 11 and 12, trembling before their fates. I knew I couldn't keep this light to myself. I had to share it, even if it cost me everything. Have you ever found a secret that made you want to change the world? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover how I brought that light to other girls and nearly paid with my life. Crickets screeched in the night, and I, Layla Brooks, 14 years old, sat in a rotting shed, my trembling flashlight illuminating 6 cousins' faces. In Chicago's West Side, we called it Study Group, a harmless name to fool the adults. But there were no math problems or textbooks here. I taught the girls, ages 11 to 13, the life-saving numbers from Ms. Sarah Nguyen's notebook, CPS phone numbers, shelter addresses, and words that could break the shackles of forced marriage. Each whispered word was a bullet, each glance a spark of hope, but I knew if our family found out, we'd pay in blood. I started with a mantra. I'm being forced to marry. I'm only 12. Please help. I made them repeat it, their voices quaking in the dark, shaky but growing steadier. Noor 11 clenched her fists until her knuckles whitened, her eyes glinting with fear. I named Ms. Nguyen, the teacher I trusted to report if we needed her. Write the numbers like equations, I said. If Mom asks, say it's homework. I taught them to give teachers a desperate look, to use trigger phrases for reports without raising suspicion. I hid scraps of paper with CPS numbers in the shed's wall cracks, like treasure only we knew. Each meeting pressed a heavier weight on me, as if their futures rested in my hands. The shed was icy, the stench of mold stinging our noses, and every footstep outside made us hold our breath. One night, a dog's howl nearby nearly made me drop the flashlight. If our family caught us, it wouldn't just be a whipping, they'd lock us away, or worse. I looked at the girls, thinking of Amira, my cousin who died at 16 from childbirth too soon. Silence was death, so I pressed on. We have to be careful, I warned. One mistake and it all falls apart. I was both proud and terrified. Proud because the girls started believing they had a choice. Terrified because my family was like a pack of wolves, ready to rip apart any challenger. Every night I checked the chair, praying it was still there. I knew I was on a razor's edge, but Noor's hopeful gaze kept me going. Have you ever risked everything to give someone a shot at freedom? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover what happened when this secret, and my entire life, was betrayed. Blood soaked through my white dress, and I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, felt the floor collapse beneath me. In Chicago's West Side, a period wasn't a sign of growing up. It was a curse, a contract forcing me into a marriage cage. My mother, Zara, cheered, her eyes gleaming. "You're a woman now." My father, Malik, declared I'd marry Ezra Khalid, a 52-year-old man whose 3 wives died young from heart failure, or rather from bearing children their bodies weren't ready for. The wedding was set in 3 days, but I never imagined the flame of hope I'd kindled in study group would be snuffed out by the one I trusted most. I faked excitement, smiling as the aunties kissed my cheeks, but inside I plotted my escape. I had CPS numbers, shelter addresses, and faith that study group would save me. But just 2 days later, my cousin Noor, 12, got her period too. She was promised to a 60-year-old man with 4 wives before her. I saw Noor's eyes, like a candle about to flicker out, and that night I pressed a scrap of paper with CPS numbers into her hand. "Tell Ms. Nguyen," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Use the exact words I taught you." I thought Noor would carry the flame forward, but I was wrong. The next morning, my mother's scream tore through the house. Who dared teach my daughter to betray? She held my scrap of paper found in Noor's pocket. My father dragged me to the yard in front of the community, burning the paper in a fire pit, black smoke curling like a curse. "You're a stain," he roared, his eyes like knives. They searched the shed, finding more papers hidden in the wall cracks. The community whispered, calling me a destroyer. Noor stood there, eyes down, too scared to meet my gaze. Fear had made her betray me. "The wedding's tomorrow," Dad decreed, and I was locked in the basement, the door bolted, no light. The basement was freezing, the damp earth smell choking me, but I didn't break. I clawed at the lock with my nails, skin tearing, blood dripping, until it snapped open. I knew I had one shot. I ran through the rain, car engines roaring and knives glinting behind me, as you've seen. I wasn't just running for me, but for Noor, for Amira, for every girl left behind. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover how I found a way out when all hope had burned to ash. Smoke from the fire pit still haunted my mind, and I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, stood trembling before the county courthouse in Chicago's west side, my soaked nightgown clinging to my skin. Hours earlier, I'd broken the basement lock, racing through rain to escape my family and a wedding to Ezra Khalid. I thought the courthouse would be the light at the end of my tunnel, where the law would shield me from the wolves who called me daughter. But I soon learned that in Chicago, freedom comes at a cost, and my family was ready to pay in violence to extinguish my spark of defiance. I poured out everything to the court worker, gripping Ms. Sarah Nguyen's hand, my teacher-turned-guide. I spoke of Ezra Khalid, the 52-year-old man with 3 wives dead young, the burns on my hands from boiling water, the CPS numbers my father burned before the community. Each word ripped through my family's curtain of lies. The woman behind the desk, her eyes kind, took careful notes. "We'll issue an emergency protective order," she said. "Your family can't contact you." I exhaled, thinking I was safe, but I didn't know this victory was just the start of a storm. I was taken to Ruth Coleman's house, a retired cop whose home was a fortress. Security cameras, steel doors, and eyes sharp as a blade. I thought I could sleep soundly. But on the third night, an explosion jolted me awake. A Molotov cocktail hit the front yard, flames licking the walls, black smoke curling into the sky. I cowered in Ruth's safe closet, my heart pounding like it might burst, hearing her call the police. "2 masked men, homemade gasoline bomb," she said, her voice steady but taut as a wire. My phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "You'll burn." By the time the cops arrived, the attackers were gone, leaving only the stench of gasoline and fear. My family didn't stop. They spread rumors I was insane, sent letters to Ruth, "Give her back or you'll both regret it." Ms. Nguyen brought evidence to court. scraps of paper I'd hidden, essays I'd written about beatings. Ruth photographed the scars on my hands, sending them to CPS. Each piece was a brick in the wall protecting me, but every night I heard the wind, fearing it was footsteps. I knew I wasn't just fighting for myself, but for Noor, for Amira, for every girl forced to stay silent. Have you ever felt freedom come with fear? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover how someone from Ezra Khalid's past emerged, changing everything. The courtroom door creaked, and I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, looked up, my heart pounding like it might shatter. I stood before my family in the county courthouse of Chicago's West Side, people who once held me close, now glaring at me like a traitor. After fleeing through the rain, surviving a Molotov cocktail thrown at Ruth's house, I thought I was ready to face them. But when a woman walked in, carrying dark secrets from Ezra Khalid's past, the world I knew crumbled. In Chicago, truth can save you, but it can also cost you everything. The courtroom was a war zone. My father, Malik, sat rigid, his eyes cold as steel. My mother, Zara, wiped crocodile tears as if I were her wound. Their lawyer branded me a brainwashed child, claiming I'd fabricated stories to ruin our family's honor. Clutching Ms. Sarah Nguyen's hand, I recounted the burns from boiling water, the lashes for meeting the wrong gaze, and Ezra Khalid, the 52-year-old man whose 3 wives died young. But their lawyer smirked. "Where's the proof?" he taunted. "Just the words of a rebel." I felt hope slipping away, like a flame doused in rain. Then Maya Ellis walked in, 26, her eyes sharp but scarred. "I'm Ezra Khalid's first wife," she said, her voice trembling yet fierce, silencing the room. Maya revealed she was forced to marry him at 14. For 6 years she endured violence, repeated miscarriages, and a body broken from bearing children too young. Her family spread word of her death to save face, but a nurse helped her escape. "I'm here," she said, meeting my gaze, "so this girl doesn't suffer what I did." She brought medical records, photos of bruises, and a picture of the fake grave her family built. Her truth was a fire, incinerating every lie. The judge ruled. A permanent protective order was granted. My family was barred from contact, with jail time for violations. But freedom came at a steep price. As I left the courtroom, my father stood pointing at me. "You're no daughter of mine," he roared in Arabic. My mother removed her headscarf, spitting on the floor before the community. "We have no child," she declared. They turned their backs, some aunties spitting too, their eyes like daggers. My phone buzzed with a final text from Mom. "You're dead." Maya took my hand. "You're not alone," she whispered. My legs felt like lead, but the fire in me still burned. I won my freedom, but lost my family. The Molotov cocktail was just the start. Have you ever paid a heavy price for doing what's right? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover how I turned this pain into hope for other girls. A scrap of paper was slipped into my hand. Its scrawled words reading, "Thank you, I called CPS." I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, stood in the dim corner of the school library, tears falling silently. After winning a permanent protective order, surviving Molotov cocktails, and being disowned by my family, I thought I might break. But in Chicago's West Side, I chose to turn my pain into a flame, not just to keep myself alive, but to light a path for other girls. From that spark, Hope Chain was born, and though my family vowed to crush it, I knew I was changing a community. I didn't do it alone. Ms. Sarah Nguyen, the teacher who stood by me in court, And Ruth Coleman, the ex-cop who turned her home into a fortress, helped me build a secret network. We didn't print flyers, my family would find them. Instead, I rewrote CPS numbers, shelter addresses, and trigger phrases for reports, hiding them in textbooks, fake math problems, history notes. If a 13-year-old girl is forced to marry, call this number, I wrote, my hand shaking with hope and fear. Ms. Nguyen passed the books to school nurses and counselors who could spot a desperate gaze. Ruth connected with community centers, where girls could stumble on the information. Within weeks, 30 girls reached out, ages 11 to 16, all craving freedom. 7 escaped to safe shelters. CPS launched a wave of investigations. Each girl was a crack in the wall my family had built, but they fought back. One night, my old social media account was hacked, posting a fake video. Noor, my cousin, sat beside her mother, saying I was crazed, tricking girls to hate their families. Noor's eyes were lifeless, like she was coerced. The video spread, and the community branded me a destroyer. Then a second Molotov cocktail hit Ruth's house, flames nearly swallowing the porch. My phone buzzed with a text from Noor. "Layla, I'm sorry, they made me." I trembled, but Ruth gripped my shoulder. "They're scared of you," she said, "because you're winning." Ms. Nguyen brought good news. A human rights group wanted to expand Hope Chain across Chicago. I knew I was on a cliff's edge, but I couldn't stop. Every phone number I shared, every girl I saved was a victory. But my family was plotting something bigger, crueler. Have you ever fought on knowing you might lose everything? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover how they tried to take my life, and how I stood tall. The shatter of glass tore through the night, and I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, cowered in a safe closet, my breath catching in my throat. In Chicago's West Side, I knew my family wouldn't forgive Hope Chain, the secret network that helped 30 girls escape forced marriages. But I never thought they'd go this far, hiring a hitman to end me, to snuff out the fire I'd ignited. After Molotov cocktails and fake smear videos, I thought I'd mastered fear. But when gunshots rang out, I realized freedom wasn't just a victory, it was a fight for survival. That night, I was at Ruth Coleman's safe house, a fortress with steel doors and cameras. I'd just checked a message from a girl saved through Hope Chain, my heart warm. Then the streetlight went dark, and heavy footsteps echoed in the yard. A bullet smashed through the window, glass exploding, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling the air. "Layla!" Ruth shouted, shoving me into the safe closet, her hand clutching the phone to call the police. I pressed the panic button on my wrist, installed by Ruth, my heart pounding like it might burst. 4 shots. 2 masked men, Ruth told 911, her voice icy. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You can't hide." I trembled but didn't cry. I thought of Noor, of Amira, and knew I couldn't break. The police arrived in 5 minutes, their sirens scattering the attackers. They left behind bullet casings and a scrawled threat on the wall, "Stop or die." Ruth and Ms. Sarah Nguyen sat with me the next morning, faces grim. The police confirmed the hitman was a distant relative, hired by my father Malik through a middleman. The FBI was called in, tracing texts and bank transfers. They offered witness protection, new name, new city, leaving Chicago. "Kid, it's the safest way," an agent said. But I shook my head, eyes stinging. "If I hide," I said, "they win. Other girls will think no one can stand up to them." Ruth moved me to a new safe house, locked down tighter, bulletproof doors, cameras everywhere. But I didn't stop Hope Chain. I sent more books with hidden CPS numbers to schools, reached girls through secret burner phones. A message came: Layla, I'm free. Thank you. That's why I kept going. My family wanted me scared, but I'd outgrown fear the night I broke that basement lock. Have you ever faced a moment that made you want to quit, but you stood up anyway? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover how my story spread across Chicago, transforming a community. A charred local newspaper lay smoldering at the safe house door, ashes swirling in the wind, but its headline still haunted me. 15-year-old upends forced marriage tradition in Chicago. I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, held the scorched scrap, my heart surging. After surviving gunfire, Molotov cocktails, and my family's disownment, my story was no longer a secret. In Chicago's West Side, where I was once seen as property, it was shaking a community, kindling hope for girls trapped in darkness. But I knew every step forward was a battle, and my family, though defeated in court, still lurked, ready to extinguish the flame I'd ignited. Hope Chain was more than books hiding CPS numbers. It became a movement. Human rights organizations contacted Ruth Coleman, arranging secret workshops to teach girls their rights. Ms. Sarah Nguyen distributed hundreds of books with hidden information to schools, libraries, even corner stores downtown. One night I got a message from a 12-year-old. Layla, I found your book in a classroom drawer. I called CPS. I'm safe. I cried, knowing I was doing something bigger than myself. But the change wasn't just among the girls. One morning, Ruth told me some mothers in the community were sneaking into workshops, faces veiled, asking how to protect their daughters. One mother, Noor's aunt, slipped a note under the door. I was wrong to stay silent, thank you. Those words were wind fueling the fire in my heart. Not everyone stood with us. Some community leaders branded me a culture destroyer, holding meetings to ban girls from reading Hope Chain books. They sent threats to human rights groups, even publicly burned a crate of our books outside the community hall. My family sued me for defamation, trying to wear me down. But they couldn't stop the movement. One afternoon, speaking anonymously via live stream at a workshop, I shared about Amira, my burns, Maya Ellis. Dozens of girls stood sharing their stories. A 13-year-old said, I want to study, not marry. The crowd erupted in applause, and I knew Chicago was waking up. My family was still watching. An anonymous text arrived. You think you've won? Not yet. But I wasn't alone. Ms. Nguyen, Ruth, and hundreds of girls I've never met stood with me. Hope Chain is proof one girl can change a community. Have you ever seen a small act spark a big change? Share your story in the comments below, and let's uncover how I turned pain into power, no matter the cost of losing my family. A letter slipped under the safe house door, its familiar handwriting freezing me in place. Layla, I'm sorry. Live well, my mother, Zara, wrote, though she once spat and called me dead. I, Layla Brooks, 15 years old, stood stunned in Chicago's West Side. After fleeing through rain, surviving gunfire, and igniting Hope Chain, I thought I'd lost my family forever. But this letter, just a few words, proved the fire of freedom I sparked didn't just save girls. It cracked the walls of our community. My journey isn't over, but I want to share the lessons that kept me standing, so you too can find the strength to change your life. My family played their final card, a public notice in the community newsletter, erasing my name, burning my photos, cursing anyone who contacted me. In our culture, it's a social death, wiping out all memory. But I didn't hurt, I felt relief. They'd run out of moves, and I was still here. A human rights organization surprised me with a scholarship, letting me continue school and lead Hope Chain. CPS and the FBI investigated my family, using evidence from study group and Maya Ellis's testimony. Ezra Khalid, the man I nearly married, faced charges for abuse. Justice is slow, but it's coming. Hope Chain is now an unquenchable flame. Hundreds of girls, ages 11 to 17, clutch our books, dialing CPS numbers I once memorized. Mothers, once silent, quietly shield their daughters. Ms. Sarah Nguyen trains teachers to spot victims. Ruth Coleman builds more safe havens. The community is fracturing. Some leaders still resist, but many mothers like mine are rising even if late. I once fought to survive, but now I've sown seeds for a forest of freedom. Every girl who escapes is a towering tree, unbreakable. My biggest lesson is this: knowledge is the mightiest weapon. A notebook in Ms. Nguyen's class saved me, and I used it to save others. You don't need strength or wealth. You just need to know your rights and dare to speak. Courage isn't fearlessness, it's acting despite fear. I urge you, learn the law, help the oppressed, don't stay silent before injustice. One small act, sharing a story, making a report, holding a hand, can transform a life. I'm not safe yet. My family may still lurk, but I'm done running. I stand here for Amira, Noor, Maya, and every girl too scared to speak. Are you ready to spark change in your life or someone else's? Share your story in the comments below, and let's keep spreading the fire of freedom, no matter how thick the darkness.